Oh, I can feel it working.
You actually can?
Yeah.
Like, what does it feel like?
Just like when I was talking to you there, I found myself getting quicker and quicker.
When I took this drug for the first time, I realised just how lazy I was. And I would never consider myself to be lazy before.
Do I think everyone should be allowed access to that turbo? Not really, because much like a turbo, it puts a whack of a lot of power on, and if you're not experienced enough to know how to handle that, it can get you into trouble.
I nailed off quite a lot of work in the last few hours, but I feel like death. I'm so tired.
I think a wonder drug is a slight exaggeration of what it is. It can change some of our functioning of the brain, but it does not do wonders.
I definitely feel slightly more awake than I did before.
It performs better than 90–95% of the population, whereas when you weren't on modafinil, you scored between 80 and 85.
These are smart drugs.
These are agents looking to enhance or extend our cognitive abilities or the repertoire of actions that we have.
Basically, a series of drugs that people in homes, offices, and universities across the United Kingdom are using to apparently make their brain better. Many are drugs you might have heard of before, with conventional uses. Things like Ritalin, a drug usually used for ADHD and narcolepsy. Others you might not have, like phenylparacetam, a drug that's now a banned performance enhancer. One of the most talked about and easily available smart drugs in the UK is a drug called Modafinil. Used traditionally for narcolepsy, it's being sold all over the internet as a cognitive enhancer, a drug to make your brain work like no other.
It seems that modafinil is a cognitive enhancer, so it shows that there were improvements in so-called higher cognitive functions like planning and decision-making.
Modafinil has been labelled the world's first safe smart drug, with some studies suggesting it's non-addictive, has few side effects, and that it works. But can all this really be true? That's what I'm trying to find out. Okay, so at this point, smart drugs just seem like miracle pills. I've been reading reviews about them online, and some of them are just ridiculous. People are saying they have written full university dissertations in a matter of days. They have managed to do work that would usually take them a week in just one day, and that their overall concentration levels have just skyrocketed. To be entirely honest, I struggle to believe this because it just sounds too good to be true. So what I'm currently doing is ordering some modafinil off of the internet, which is one of the main drugs people take. I'm going to take that throughout this film to see if it works, basically. While I waited for my pills to arrive, I met up with an old friend to find out a bit more about modafinil. Nice to see you, Holmes. That was the worst high five of all time.
It's Annie Mac.
Jason is an athlete and an entrepreneur, and it turns out he's been taking the drug I was about to take for years.
Wow.
What happened?
Oh.
You didn't swallow it?
I didn't swallow it. Oh, I can feel it working.
You actually can?
Yeah.
Like, what does it feel like?
Just like when I was talking to you there, I found myself getting quicker and quicker.
No.
No, I did. Like, I felt like I was talking too quickly. I was trying to get too much in.
Describe like what it actually feels like.
So, like, without sounding weird, it sounded a little bit warmer. Like, I feel a little bit warmer. So I feel like my body temperature has increased. You just feel a little bit sharper. I think I could probably compare it to a camera that's in focus and a camera that's out of focus. I think normally maybe everything's a little bit softer. Right now, everything feels very sharp.
And when you first took it, like, was it an instant kind of effect?
Yeah, I found the effect straight away. I found my productivity increased massively, and I knew that I wanted to keep taking it.
Okay, so after about a week of waiting, my parcel has arrived from the undisclosed location in India to my desk in London. I'm slightly nervous for a number of reasons, mainly because I don't usually take prescription drugs, especially ones that I bought from the internet. I held off actually taking the drugs until the following day. I also consulted the doctor, but I was still taking a huge risk by taking the pills. I was heading to Cambridge University to try and find out how and if modafinil actually worked. They had agreed to also test me to see if it had any effect on my cognitive abilities.
Just tell me exactly how modafinil works. Do we know how it works?
Well, we know a lot about its actions in the brain, and we know that it affects a lot of different neurotransmitters. But what we don't really know is which one of those effects has to do with the improvements that we see in people's cognitions. We know that it acts on dopamine and noradrenaline. It also seems to act on another transmitter, glutamate, and we think all of these are important for cognitive functions.
Professor Barbara Sahakian has been studying modafinil for years, but says we still don't really know how it works as a cognitive enhancer. But she's certain it does work.
Do these actually make you more intelligent?
Depends what you mean by do they make you more smart. They certainly might improve your ability to plan and problem solve. So if you can problem solve better, are you getting smarter?
Professor Sahakian says the main issue is that we don't know the long-term effects of modafinil, and she wants the government to carry out studies to see if there are any. Should there be no major issues though, she sees a potential use for the drug society-wide. After the interview, I was taken into a room to do the test.
We're filming something with the BBC. Right. So he's over there.
The whole idea is that I'm going to do one without taking modafinil and one with taking modafinil.
That's correct.
And then kind of comparing
And
the
then
scores.
comparing the performance and cognition on each task.
Okay, so over lunch I took my first ever hit of modafinil, and I don't really feel that much different. It's been about an hour now, or an hour and a half, and I feel pretty much the same. Although I do feel slightly more awake, but I have just walked in the cold for a little bit, so maybe that's why. But yeah, I'll keep you posted.
I got this. This is basically Mario Kart.
Your score on the attention task, you performed better than 90-95% of the population, whereas when you weren't on modafinil, you scored better than 80-85% of people.
95% is, does that make me a genius?
Yes.
That is good. So better than 95% of like people my age.
Your age, intelligence,
That's unbelievable.
and gender.
Wow,
yeah, the person was 80 to 85.
So it's gone up by like
10%.
3 hours just flew by in a matter of seconds, and I feel so much more awake, so much more focused. I'm quite amazed, to be honest.
These tests must be taken with a pinch of salt. There are a number of other factors that could have contributed to my results, and it's a very specific scenario. At this point, I still needed to see how it worked in real life, and as you'll find out, it wasn't going to be all plain sailing.
If you're based in the UK, there's only really one place you can order modafinil, and that is through some quite secretive websites on the internet. And this causes quite a few issues, besides the fact that you have to enter your credit card details into a website that has virtually no info. You also have no idea if what you're getting is legit.
It's not illegal to buy things like modafinil for yourself, only to sell them without a prescription. But that doesn't mean it's always safe to buy them online.
You never know what you're going to buy at the end of the day, what product is going to land on through your doormat.
I had bought my modafinil from a website in India that even came with tracking information. I called up the pharmaceutical company that made it, and they said as long as it had their branding, it should be theirs. But they also said they don't sell items online. There are those, though, who sell modafinil illegally in the UK.
Recently, on an operation, we seized over 20,000 units containing 13 different types of medicine in one operation. That was valued at over £200,000, and one of the drugs that was seized hadn't even been tested on humans yet.
The MHRA, the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, are trying to crack down on this in the United Kingdom.
This year alone, 2015, during one operation, Operation Pangea, received over 46,000 these types of drugs.
One retailer who didn't want to be identified told me they get around the MHRA restrictions by labelling their products as not for human consumption and selling in bags as opposed to pills. As it currently stands, this makes life quite difficult for the MHRA.
It seems like you can get around these laws by making it seem as if it's for laboratory use, not packaging them in pills and saying it's not for human consumption. So is that an issue in your eyes, do you think?
Yes, it is an issue, but what we do is when we come across these sorts of issues, we have other parts of the agency who make determinations on that, and if we can determine that is a medicine, then we would take action.
As well as the large number of websites, there's also a huge number of forums dedicated to speaking about so-called smart drugs. On Reddit alone, there's a nootropics thread with nearly 65,000 members, and smaller threads with thousands of members each. One issue that keeps popping up in these forums is the UK's Psychoactive Substance Bill, a bill that looks set to pass in 2016 that will put a blanket ban over any drug with psychoactive effect, and potentially a host of so-called smart drugs. So, after taking another modafinil pill, I travelled to Nottingham to meet the co-owner of a British company that sells nootropics, to see what he thinks about the proposed bill.
All right. Nice to meet you. Here we have my treatment and therapy room where I, do a bit of rehab, my chiropractic adjustments, my nutrition counselling and things like that. Okay.
I mean, is your head going to explode now because you've taken quite a lot? No.
No, that's the beauty of genuine nootropics. Because they're not prescription strength, it's very hard to overdose on them.
What has been banned in the past?
Some of the things that have been banned I've genuinely scratched my head on, and some of the things that have been left I've genuinely scratched my head on because they're the ones that should be banned and the other ones should be allowed through. Am I worried? No, because I don't tend to worry about things. We're reformulating NeuroStim, our major product, to be more in line with those guidelines if and when the psychoactives bill comes in line. I think it's a bit short-sighted and a little bit disturbing, but the powers that be will operate in the way that they see fit, not necessarily to the best advantage of the man in the street, but with their own agenda. It makes things harder.
After the interview, I contacted the Home Office. They told me that as many smart drugs can also be used for medicines, they would likely be exempt and will continue to be regulated by the MHRA. But as the bill is so broad, some experts have told me that many so-called smart drugs could be implicated.
Okay, so as you can probably see and hear, I'm in the toilet of a train. And that's because after taking modafinil for a little while, despite the kind of initial burst of energy I got, all I currently have is a really bad headache, the need to urinate frequently, kind of no appetite, and I feel a little bit sick. And I'm also very dehydrated and have drank a lot of water as a consequence. So yeah, it's not really going too well.
Okay, so earlier I was quite unsure as to whether the modafinil was really doing anything and whether it had any effect on me whatsoever. But now I'm quite sure it probably is, because I've been lying in bed for about an hour and I just can't get to sleep because my brain is just completely switched on.
Modafinil is something often associated with students, but there are some in another less reported community that are taking them as well, the world of tech startups. Marcus is an app developer, and he started taking modafinil to get ahead of the game.
Hello.
Hey.
Nice to meet you, man.
Good to meet you too. It wasn't like I was taking a drug and it was giving me some kind of high and making me actually happier, but the feeling that I was getting a lot done was very exciting.
Tell me what your frame of mind, just at that. I was trying to get into your head.
Yeah. Frame of mind is very important.
Yeah.
My frame of mind was, I need to create the next startup and make it work. I just experienced quite a big failure and I wanted to make a success instead.
So you started taking modafinil at the same time you stopped working at the other place?
Yes, and that's an interesting point. So when my startup kind of bombed, this is something interesting to think about. When it bombed, I was obviously feeling very, very low. And I'm a very positive-minded person, so I instantly looked for something to make me feel better about my life and my circumstances. So a theory I have is that when I took the drug for the first time, I may have subconsciously exaggerated to myself how much it was helping me, because I knew it made me feel better.
Because you're taking this to kind of get better, to be more productive, and in essence to be more successful. I mean, has it shown any sign of doing that yet?
In terms of the success of my life in general, no, I haven't suddenly gone from being a loser to Mr. Successful.
Okay, so it's my final day taking these so-called smart drugs, and if there was any day for them to work, this would be it. Not only do I look and feel horribly rough because I haven't really slept at all, I also have to spend the full day editing this film because it needs to be done in 2 days, which is not a lot of time.
Editing is something I find notoriously difficult to stay focused on, and I figured if there was one day the pills would help, this would be it. But they didn't quite work as I expected, again. The only real effect was a lack of hunger.
Yeah, so still no tangible improvements in my concentration levels, and it's definitely taken away my appetite because it's like 2 p.m. and I still haven't eaten when I usually would have.
As well as this, I got headaches and a very strange lump that appeared on my arm.
I've got like a weird kind of spot on my arm, not sure if you can see it.
This happened on the first day too, on the back of my leg. As the day progressed though, they seemed to kick in.
So it's 10:30 when I'm still at the BBC. I got quite a lot of work done towards the end of the day, but it's just made me feel groggy and kind of awake but really tired at the same time.
At the end of it all, I met again with Jason, who said he'd never had side effects like mine.
You took like the exact same type of pills from the same company, and you seem to have an enjoyable experience.
Time of my life, mate.
I got a weird spot on my arm, on the back of my leg, couldn't really sleep. Have you had anything like that?
No, I've never had anything like that, man.
After taking a final blood test at the doctor's, I was told there was a chemical in my blood released when your liver is trying to push something out of your system. And so, my body didn't really like what I was taking. When it comes to smart pills, there's a lot left to be discovered. My experience on the drug was not what I expected. On the one hand, I was slightly disappointed I hadn't had the experience others had told me they'd had when on Modafinil. On the other hand though, I was relieved that for me at least, these weren't a super drug. It just means I'd never be tempted to try them again.